Salutations, gamers. You know, it's no longer BT25, and I did not put out a Titan profile, but this is what I ended up with at the end of 25, moving into EX12. I'm not sure if there's really any changes I would make all that much. We have new option cards that you might find interesting, but this is what I was running through all of last season, and I'm not running now, as now I am the one who gets to spam dual cards, but we'll be back to this in BT26. So without further ado, a long-awaited Titans deck profile. So you know how it is when you start here. We start with the eggs, and point of contention, we're just going to be on 4 of the Doraemon. So this is the opponent's turn. When an opponent's Digimon attacks by trashing 1 card from your hand, one of your Titan trait Digimon unsuspends. The reason that we're on this is just because it allows us to have way better defensive lines when you're on your TITAMONs. Both the old and new get a lot of value out of this card, and whilst it does stop you from being able to fully extend further for things like the Invasion of Titans crack, the utility this gives you defensively is just like something that you cannot ignore. Then for rookies, we are on 3 of the Chronomon, 4 of the Snow Gobbly, and 4 of the Gobblimon. The reason we're on 3 of these is just because more often than not, when you're like desperately digging for cards, Snow Gobbly lets you see more cards when you're looking for something specific. So usually Snow Gobbly is the preferred draw, and then this is more for like late game if you have something that's truly dead in hand, being able to guaranteed +2, because this whiffs on every one of your Tamers, or if you're specifically searching for Tamers, it helps sometimes to be able to change up what you've got. But more often than not, this is like a secondary evolution rookie. You evolve the cost reduction one as a primary, and then you slam these as your searchers. But you know, Chronomon can work, especially when you when you're like super duper low on cards and you have things that you don't mind pitching, or if you know you're super plus on cards. So yep. Then for our champions, we did get 2 of the new Witchmon. So this Witchmon at first didn't impress me, but she is very, very cool. 5 to slam, 6,000 DP is relevant because it means that you can play through Ruin mode, but the thing that I use it most for is playing off of Invasion of Titans or off Titamon. By trashing 1 card from your hand, you may return 1 Titan trait card from your trash to your hand. Then if played by effect, you can delete one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. So this can randomly clear level 5s, and it means that you can do some really sick plays versus things like bears, where if they Great Grizzly taunt you and you're able to like swing with the promo Tita, being able to play the Witchmon during that attack means that you're able to then pop the Great Grizzly before it can win the battle. So you can like fight bears this way. All turns as well, it's a defensive tool. You get to delete a level 4 or lower Digimon, so you get to do that at the same timing as the new TITAMONs pop, so you can use it to try and eat things that would get in the way of other things. Quite useful there, but because it's not the inherit that does the full combo up to a level 6, we don't on too many of them. You'd rather just find them and recur them when you need them. And then speaking of combos, we're on 2 of the red guy, 3 of the blue, and 4 of the green. You could argue that this should be 4 of the jamming, and I totally get that. But with Beelstar running around, like, as much as I kept meaning to do it, where I was like, all right, let me change this over to a 4th one so that way I don't die in security. But like, with Beelstar running around and being so rampant, jamming's not going to help you when you crash into an option card. So I just found that I stuck to my guns on 6k removal for when you need it, jamming for everything that's not Beelstar and these option-heavy removal decks, and then lockdown is kind of key. If you can't pop something, be able to lock it down was more useful. Obviously, it's a pretty bad lock, but like not every deck has unsuspend other like with effect. So more often than not, its bad lock is still good enough. So we're on these guys. The your turn inherit of when a card is trashed, you get to evolve up the line is kind of the whole reason to play the deck. So yeah, we ultimately end up on that, and those are the power budget of your deck. For the level 5s, we've changed up the ratios here. We're on 2 of the Skull Greymon. I know I was a Skull Greymon hater, but I've seen the light. On play when digivolving, by trashing one card in your hand, you get blocker and retaliation. And on deletion, you may play a level 4 or lower demon or titan. So this replaced the Skull Seadramon because same evo cost. Annoyingly, because it's not 2-color, you weren't able to like sometimes cheat the additional memory by paying a more expensive cost, but to like crack Invasion of the Titans, which is a little bit annoying, but because its effect is by trashing one to do the thing, it actually allows you to extend further in places that if Skull Seadramon was your only level 5 that you wouldn't be able to. So just for consistency. And blocker retaliation is nice because obviously you get blocker from the blue level 4, but this just means that sometimes you get to do blocker jamming and then blocker retaliation. It gains it as well, so if you get de-digivolved, which is a common form of removal versus us, you still have it. And it does mean that if it chump blocks or if it gets played off Invasion of Titans, it's an unde-digivolvable blocker retaliator that floats into something. So you can usually float into something that does lockdown, float into something that does block. So like the Ogre or Hyoga floating off of this is really, really frustrating. Obviously, like I said, this floating into a Witchmon as well is level 5 removal. So you can catch a lot of people in situations where like they're willing to crash into this and they can play through the retaliation, but they can't play through the second thing that comes in. Obviously on one of these one-off Scorbolucci's, using this basically entirely just for slingshot. Sometimes you use it when you're not slingshotting, but more often than not, you're just using this to slingshot. They put it to 1 for a reason. This card is very, very good. And then for us, the rest of our dogs, we are on Scorbolucci's. These would all be judge stamped, but I'm being gimped by my local game store. He keeps forgetting to bring them. But yeah, so we're on mix of those. But yeah, Scorbolucci, him and Skullgreymon on a security attack +1 inherit. Honestly, more often than not, one thing I will actually say is because these are obviously these are your primary preferred assembly targets. More often than not, you're actually trying to go into Skullgreymon. Like, if you weren't trying to slingshot at all, you'd probably run 3 Skullgreymon. Because you obviously need the Scorbolucci name for assembly. But, if I have the opportunity to evolve Skullgreymon, pitch Scorbolucci for cost, that's what I'm going to do. Because it sets up assembly. So that way, if my TITAMON gets stuck on the board, which is much more likely now, I can actually start assembling the pieces in trash. No pun intended. Whilst having an actual useful inherit here. It does suck when obviously your Scorbolucci and your TITAMON are stuck on board. So being able to go into Skullgreymon when you see him, he's definitely kind of best in slot. Unless you specifically need to pop a 3 and a 4. It is mandatory pops as well. So if there's stuff that does trigger when something is popped, you do have to account for that. And then we're going to put the guy that gets on the horse 3 of the promo Tita and 4 of the new guy. So like I said before, I have some very talented friends, so all finalist stamps here. This guy actually now gets a lot more value. Because of the new egg, you can actually trigger his all turns when your hand is trashed from to play a level 4. So you do your swing, preferably with jamming. You really do need jamming for this guy because he is a measly 11k. You swing it, it lives, you've got your second body, and if they swing, you get to unsuspend and play a second guy out. Which means for next turn, you're going to actually have the ability to comfortably go Alliance 2 checks, especially with a Witchmon where she's 6k. It's 17k Alliance 3 checks is pretty gnarly. Still no when attacking trigger to trigger his float stuff, but having the egg be another means of being able to do it does really help quite a bit. And then obviously the new guy is broken. It's D-Digivolve or DP-. Unfortunately, we're in a format that is filled with D-Digivolve and DP-. So he is kind of easy to answer, but if your deck can't answer this guy, then damn, he is difficult to deal with. Evolves for 2 cost over a TITAMON, 4 cost over a TS, and 5 cost over a level 5, which does matter. Sometimes you can use that extra 5 -1 cost from combo to be able to pass exactly 5 for Invasion of Titans. On play, when digivolving, when attacking once per turn by trashing 1 card in your hand, delete all of your opponent's highest DP Digimon. Then after, if it was played or Digivolve by an effect, trash their top card of security. So once again, this is kind of like a 3 damage turn when you evolve him at combat step, because you're evolving by effects. You attempt to delete all, burn top card of security, and then you're swinging for 2 checks. All turns when it would leave the battle area by trashing 2 cards from your hand, it doesn't leave. So once per turn protection, basically on all forms of protection, obviously against DP minus and Digivolve Lamau. And then all turns when your hand is trashed from delete your opponent's lowest DP Digimon, not once per turn. That's the bit that trips up a lot of people, is you delete everything at the highest, you burn the top card of security, and then you eat the lowest guy as well. And then on their turn, you're frequently eating the lowest guy. Sometimes they're like, all right, I'll swing. And you go, okay, I'll pitch one to unsuspend, and I'll pop the lowest guy. And like, sick. Okay, I'm going to pop TITAMON. I'm like, I will protect. And I'll pop the lowest guy. I was like, I thought it was once per turn. It's like, the protection is once per turn. I have trash from my hand. I would like to eat your lowest guy, please. So, card is very, very good. He is 13k, which, you know, that is a very crucial number. He is quite large, this big lad. Much bigger than 11. And as a reminder, if Alliance was not present at the time of the attack declaration, you cannot trigger Alliance. You cannot evolve into this at combat step, play a guy out, then Alliance with it. So, definitely need jamming for this guy. Do not need jamming for this guy nearly as much, which is also another reason that I wanted to play greedy and not stick with it. And speaking of stick with it, did you know that promo TITAMON, the artist is Kadra, and then new TITAMON, the artist is Kadra, and TITAMON Scobalucci, if you're nice with it, the artist is Kadra. So yeah, we got man on horse. The reason that you play the deck: rush, piercing, execute, on play, delete all of their lowest level, non-deletion, float into 1 TITAMON or 1 level 5 Titan trait without playing the cost, assembly -6, play for 8 with TITAMON and Scobalucci. Card's pretty good. It's your finisher for game. I feel like 3 is probably what you want to be on. I do not have space for 3, and I do not have a 3rd alt art. So I chose to max out on the Titans instead and go 7 here, but realistically and honestly, when people asked me, I kept thinking that my list was this, where it was 6 TITAMONs and then TITAMON Scobalucci's. But ideally, what you just recognize is if you hit one early and you have to use one early and the game doesn't end, you use your Witchmon to recur it. So a lot of the times, if I'm going TITAMON Scobalucci, I'll do the execute, I'll do the float into one of these Titans, and then the Titan will play out Witchmon, recur the TITAMON Scobalucci. So having these 3 felt pretty good, because obviously, you know, if you can float into Protected Idiot, that's great. If you don't need the protection and you'd rather swarm the board and go wide, being able to float into one of these does help, because sometimes if things are eating lowest DP, if this is your single body on board, it's going to be the thing that gets targeted over and over, whereas this kind of fakes a protection by having something next to it that eats a delete lowest DP for you. So sometimes floating into 2 bodies is kind of like what you need. And again, obviously, if you have Invasion of Titans, you float into even more things. But yeah, I basically Invasion of Titans out Witchmon, or Promo Tita out Witchmon to add back your TITAMON Scobalucci's. Obviously, if you can just hold both of them, that's great. But, you know, often one will be in security or one will be deep. So you just need to hold on to one and recur it. Obviously, if you have 3, you don't have to dig as hard for it. Sometimes you do just lose games because you just couldn't find one of them or a second one, and you couldn't recur the Witchmon because, you know, you are on low counts of both. To help us get us there, though, we're on 3 Arsena. She's part of the slingshot, and then 2 Matt. He's the other half of it, as your memory said it, and then we are on 1 Daniel Cananiel. We are a TS deck at the end of the day, and being able to pass 3, so you get to cast Invasion of Titans for 3 and then declare an attack. Sometimes this is useful as well. You can use it to make sure that you're passing a decent amount of memory to make sure you get Invasion of Titans delay effect, where you get to use this to declare the attack, then go. Can sometimes be what you need to do. It does suck, but sometimes it makes it work. It also means if you get like memory choke to 1 and you don't have a memory setter, that you can still evolve into the 4 past turn, use Dan Kanan to make it swing, and you do full combo that way. But more often than not, it's just to get extra value out of your turn pass. If we had more options that were worth casting, this could potentially be at more, but I think the slingshot, even though it's harder to set up, is more value than the consistent value of Dankanan, because we're just not like a traditional TS deck yet. When Plutomon comes out, maybe we'll need more of these bad boys, but for now, yeah, this is the setup. I'm not going to explain the slingshot in full, but like basically if you slam any of not the Witchmon 4s, pitch this for cost. You get to then go into any of the others because they're undead. We've maxed out on undeads here as our level 5s. You get to go into that, and then you will now be a Titan inherit. You do have to pay the cost for it, which is why having a memory setter banked and ready to snap the memory back to 3 is really, really important. If you need to see it in motion, I've done it in previous TITAMON deck profile. But yeah, these are our Tamers. And then to finish things off, we're on 1 Jack Raid. Sometimes games go long and you end up with like 20 or 30 cards in trash, and sometimes the Jack Raid. I've done Jack Raid to just barely have enough to keep turn with this thing and then go for broke that way. Sometimes Jack Raid just comes up. Sometimes it's annoying insecurity. And then we're on 3 Invasion of Titans. It was 4. I cut it down to 3 to fit the 4th copy of the new Titamon. Again, instead of that, you could either go 3-3, which is what I was running for a lot of the format before it became 3-4, or you could use it to have an extra copy of Titamon. Just because we weren't proccing the delay, now that we've changed the egg, it's not as good. And it obviously feels best when you have a Dankanan, and we're still only on 1 Dankanan, but draw power is not that bad. And then the other reason that you'd be on Dankanan is just so you can cast Tidal Stream. 5 cost to tell Glowing Dawn to kick rocks is kind of necessary in this format. Also, being able to link it. Sometimes you cast it for 5 and then link it into raising. So that way when you push up, you can like bounce. It means that when your Titamon is swinging, you can sequence it in a way that you could have the Tidal Stream bounce something that would have gotten eaten. Or you like pop lowest, then bounce something that was being protected by something being next to it. It's a cool card. You can sometimes use it to go crazy. One of the insane plays I had was like Jack Raid, keep turn with assembly, swing it, obviously do the 2 checks, Tidal Stream to bounce a remaining Digimon because I chose not to use the deletion effect, bounce it, unsuspend, and then I got to swing and finish that way. So you can do some crazy things with Tidal Stream. You can actually use it aggressively if you've got the memory, with things like Jack Raid, with things like Dan Yuki. Sometimes they have to pass you a lot to clear a Titamon because he is so difficult to deal with. But more often than not, this is a 2-off security bomb that wins you the game. A way of slowing down the game if you need it to buy an extra turn, and just an extra form of non-deletion removal, which we do need in this format. You could look at things like Ignition Flare. I wanted non-deletion removal, so Tidal Stream was the pick. Sorry it took so long to get this one done, but here's what I've been running for Titans. Hope you enjoy it, and I am now going to go talk about the worst blue cards I've ever resolved in my entire life. So look forward to that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!